1998 fund. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today on our annual conference call. I'd like to first introduce the board of directors and our key volunteers. I'd like to start with our family assistance member, Michelle Levica, our fundraising chair, Tim O'Connor, our legal advisor, Jeff Showalter, and I'd now like to introduce you to the actual board of directors. Mr. Jason Kostal, Mr. Nick Palmisano, Lieutenant Colonel Mark Weaver, John Serafini as the chairman, and myself as the president. It is our absolute honor to be members of the board and part of the team and to talk to you tonight with our annual conference call. For those that don't know the history of the fund, as we pay tribute to our fallen brethren at the reunion, a small group of us came together and realized that duty did not end with military service, nor did it end with the passing of one of our classmates. We determined the best way to tribute those was not just to remember them at the reunion, but more importantly, take care of their families. That group that came together in 2008 became the core of our board of directors, and they are with us today. It's an absolute honor that the fund started and ended with our classmates, as it does today. I'd like to highlight the reason that we do what we do. There are unfortunately a growing number of reasons, and that list right now is at 11. It includes Chris Johnson, Dennis Pintor, Jason Gonzalez, Jay Harding, Jeff Johnson, Justin Samea, Mark Gardner, Nate Daly, Paul Voelke, Stephen Frank, and Franklin Massey. Again, these are the 11 reasons we do what we do. I'd like to quickly cover the agenda so everyone knows what's coming up. After I'm done talking, we'll have our keynote speaker, and we're honored tonight to have General McChrystal joining us. Following that, Mark Weaver will cover progress to date. Following that, we have two guest speakers that are family members. We're honored to have with us a Gold Star family member of our own fallen, Paul Voelke. Mrs. Traci Voelke will be speaking, as well as the Baldwin family. Following that, John Serafini will review our financial status and our progress financially. Then Tim O'Connor will cover upcoming events. And then Jason Kostal will speak about how to support the fund. Finally, Sammy Sok will cover question and answers. And then I will close. Just a reminder that if you want to submit a question at any time during the annual conference call, you can go to our Facebook site and leave a note, and Sammy will monitor it. And then again, if anything that General McChrystal speaks about that you want to raise a question or you want to ask him a question at the end of his time, please go through our Facebook site and send it to Sammy. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Tim O'Connor.
Thank you, Ron. Classmates, last year you'll recall that we had our suit join as guest speaker for the annual call. This year we are honored to have yet another inspiring leader who represents our class motto, duty will not wait. Our guest speaker this year builds courage where courage seems to fail, regains faith when there seems to be little cause for faith, and creates hope when hope becomes forlorn. I first met General McChrystal on the veteran support circuit a couple of years ago, and have been inspired by how such an accomplished warrior can be such a genuine leader. A retired four-star general, Stanley McChrystal was a former commander of the U.S. and International Security Assistance Force, Afghanistan, and Joint Special Operations Command. General McChrystal is the co-founder of the McChrystal Group, LLC, and a senior fellow at Yale University Jackson Institute for Global Affairs, where he teaches a course on leadership and operation. He is also the chairman of the Aspen Institute's Franklin Project, dedicated to promoting national service initiatives among American youth. He is the author of two New York Times best-selling books, My Share of the Task, a memoir, and Team of Teams, New Rules of Engagement for a Complex World. General McChrystal resides in Alexandria, Virginia, with his wife of 37 years, Annie. Sir, on behalf of the 98 Fund team and our classmates gathered, thank you once again for joining, and we look forward to your remarks.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks to all members of the board and supporters of the fund, and to your entire class and the family members who make up the community. When I think of your motto that includes the word duty, and I think of the motto of the military academy, duty on our country, what really comes to mind is the experience that the class of 98 has had, and that is one in which you entered responsibility is far more than most of us think about when we're young, and it involves cost, and it involves sacrifices, and it involves commitments, things that we promise to do and then live up to. And y'all are extraordinarily admirable what you've done. I'd like to talk about a few points, and I want to really start with the world. And rather than talk about the whole world, I'm going to talk about the world that I'm most familiar with, the Middle East region, Afghanistan as well, and what we see there and what I think it means to us. First, we're seeing an incredible amount of turmoil, and we're seeing the rise of ISIS. And when I think of ISIS, I think of really Al-Qaeda being the first iteration of that particular terrorist group, and then Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which many of us saw up close, as being 2.0, and then ISIS really was 3.0. It's the latest manifestation of a kind of extremist movement that has extraordinary power. And it's got power from ideology and from commitment, but it also has special power now in an age of information warfare, where ISIS on a daily basis communicates with about 100 million people around the world. And that gives them the ability to influence, to fight, to shape the opinions of so many people. And it's no longer defined to a small area. It's now, of course, across a region and in big cases around the world. What we saw in Paris, what we see unfolding in Brussels, are all reflections of a problem that really goes back to what is happening in the region. And it's more than just ISIS. It's the fact that the political stability of an entire part of the world is going through extraordinary stresses and strains. You could argue that it's collapsing, and that many of the governments which have provided at least stability, if not impressive democracy or human rights, it has provided something predictable. Well, in many cases, that's eroded, if not fallen apart. And so what I think we're going to see over the next few years is that's going to continue forward. We're going to see some national borders erased that date back to the fall of the Ottoman Empire. We're going to see, I believe, some changes in governments. And in many cases, it's going to be very hard to predict where that takes us. The one thing I will predict is that we will be involved. And when I say we will be involved, I mean the West. More specifically, I mean the United States. More specifically, I mean the United States military in many different ways. And more specifically, I mean soldiers and families as you represent. Because although there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic for the long-term future of the world and even the near-term future of the world, I think our kids will have a better life than we have had. But the reality is it's going to be challenging, because they'd say we live in a world that's people will describe as VUCA, or volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And I think that's probably an understatement. I think what we are going to find ourselves in is a world where it's politically ambiguous, it is militarily difficult, it is complex to the point where it will be impossible to predict the next version of things that will happen. So as militaries traditionally do, is we try to take the last war and extrapolate the lessons and prepare for the next war. I think that's going to be a fool's errand. I think we are going to have to go at life in this world with an extraordinary sense of adaptability, an extraordinary sense that we are going to have to learn more quickly than we've ever learned before, respond to what we learned, and then take actions. And so you are going to be part of, and already are, part of a generation that is going to change the way the military thinks and the way the nation interacts around the world. And it's going to be hard. I can predict that up front. You already know it. But it's going to demand a tremendous amount of you as individuals. It's going to demand a lot of the people that you lead. And it's going to demand an extraordinary amount of the families that are so central to part of this. Now, when you think about this, and I've got my experience, yours will be similar, but it will also have new twists to it. I think of what I experienced and what I sort of took away from that. The first is I went to West Point to learn to be a soldier, and I know they said that you go for a good college education, and I was less focused on academics than I was on learning to be a platoon leader, or learning it maybe, if I was very lucky, someday to be a company commander. And what I found was those skills, which I thought were the arcane science of soldiering, were going to be the real secret. And we all learn those pretty easily. What is really hard to learn and what really becomes more important, at least put it that way to me, is how do you prepare yourself as a person? How do you prepare yourself as a leader? How do you prepare yourself as a father or a mother or a brother or a friend? Because at the end of the day, all of the things which we learn in military training are pretty easy commodities to take up. But what we do to make ourselves people, when I talk about people, I talk about an in-depth person that has values that we admire, that has strength which comes inside, and that strength can both show enough courage to rely on others, but also be there when others need it. And I would tell you from personal experience, you're going to have tremendous ups in your life. You're going to have moments of great success, moments of elation from that. And you're going to also have failures. And those failures are not necessarily predictable. Those failures could come in failures in your family life. They could come in failures in your personal life. They could come in failures of your professional life. And in most cases, they will come from a direction you don't expect them. And suddenly you will find yourself tested in a way that was not something that you were able to foresee. And then what I found, and I had my own personal moment in 2010 when I offered my resignation to the president, and it really caused me to have several thoughts. And one is, who am I first and foremost? What's most important to me? What are my values? Because at the end of the day, that's what you're going to have left. And then second, less predictable to me was the power of friendships and relationships. Because when you need it, I found friends and people that I hadn't even been close to for a long time were suddenly there for me. On the day that I retired, I had classmates that I hadn't seen for 30 plus years show up. And that will turn out to be the sinew and strength that will be there for you when you're not expecting it. But of course, what that means is you have to be there for other people. You have to be there for those moments of failure in their life. You have to be there for moments of weakness, of moments of hurt, of moments of sacrifice. And you have to be there without having to be asked. You have to be there, stand up, so that you can do your part when people need it. Because in one way or another, we're all going to need it sometime. I can't tell you how impressed I am with what you've done with the fund, because in a fund that you created with essentially no overhead, you've shown that you're able to contribute your own efforts to make this work, to make it be organized, to make it be efficient, and ultimately to be effective. And the money matters. It does matter. It makes a difference. But I think what matters far more is just the demonstration that you as classmates, you as friends, you as family members are willing to be involved. I'm involved in a number of nonprofit things. I'm in a Yellow Ribbon Fund, which what it does is it helps family members with things that the government can't help them with. I've worked it. And my wife does about every other month, she takes a group of ladies on a retreat where they just get away because they've been with their wounded spouse for typically for years, and she gives them a chance just to clear their head. It's a small thing. But what it is it's those things in life, the small things that add up to be the big things. And what you do in your own personal time to commit to this, and all the work you've done to organize this fund, and all the work you've done to make this effective is extraordinary. And the last thing I'd say about it is, you're all going to get busy in life. You're all going to have periods when you've got so many things on your plate, you just don't have time to do something. And what I would tell you, if you share this commitment across a group, there'll always be some people with the bandwidth to do it. And there'll also always be each other that you can hold accountable, because you've all committed. It's like running a marathon. You said, we're all going to run this marathon, and if you're alone, you might decide to quit at mile 18. But when you're in a group, you've committed it, so you don't. And this is that kind of effort. You can hold each other accountable. You can look each other in the eye. You can take pride that not only you've done something really good, you've done something with people who are really good. And that's, of course, what's special about the bond that you've created. So I'm going to stop there and thank you. Of course, I'll be available for any questions anyone might have. Thank you.
Sir, this is Mark DeRocchi, and I just want to say I cannot thank you enough for your words and the concept of every one of us will need help at some point, and that when we have bandwidth to give to help others, strikes absolutely what this whole fund is about. And I think you hit it right on the head, sir. And I greatly appreciate your understanding and then also sharing your story. I also am very impressed with the strength that you saw of your classmates when you retired. Very impressive, and I hope one day that we all get to say the same thing. Sir, I would like to open up to Sammy to see if any questions came in while you were speaking, and so I'll turn it over to Sammy Sok.
Hey, good evening, sir. We do have a question that was brought up by one of the classmates. The first question is, sir, you've led through some difficult circumstances. What resources and compass do you use to help guide you through those decisions that are very gray in nature?
You know, it's interesting. You want to drop back on your military training and things like that, and I'm sure that it is there. But what I really think I fall back on is deciding what's really important to me. When it gets really difficult, to stop back and say, what are my priorities as a person? What are the values that I believe in? Sometimes it's the example of leaders that I have. Sometimes it's more basic than that. It's just what I think is right or wrong, and my sense of responsibility. At the end of the day, you know, there's a metric. Everybody has some kind of metric against which they place or they make decisions. Sometimes it's what would a great person that you knew do in this case, what would my parents want me to do, or something like that. What I always did was think of my wife and my son, even when he was quite young, and I'd say, okay, if exactly what I did in this circumstance were explained to them completely, would I be proud to have them hear it, or would I be slightly embarrassed or ashamed? And that became very important to me. It wasn't the New York Times test that some people talk about, but it was that sense, because I always knew that I could fail and that'd be okay. But if I didn't live up to values that I thought that they would admire, then that would be something beyond failure, and I don't have a word for that.
Thanks, sir. Sir, actually, this one's from me. It's a personal question. So I remember in a room back at ISAF with you, General Caldwell, and General Rodriguez. Sir, what's it like when your classmates are all 3 and 4 stars? Do you guys go back and act like plebes again, or do you guys share that camaraderie, sir? What's that experience like?
That's a fair question. We're not allowed to say that. You know, it's funny. If you put one junior person in the room, we all act like generals. If we're all just in there by ourselves, we act like probably yearlings again. It's pretty funny. I will talk about one day, because the 3 of us had known each other as cadets, and you know, we served in the 82nd together. And also, we knew each other even more than most classmates do. But one day, a few months after I got there, we're all in my office together. We got on the phone and we called my roommate from West Point, who was at that point had just had his tongue cut out for throat cancer, and he was dying. And he died a month or 2 later. And we got on the phone with him, and the 3 of us just talked to an old friend who could barely answer back. But it was one of those moments where it just felt right. And you looked at each other as you're talking on the phone, and the years melt away, and suddenly what really matters and what you laughed about in the old days is what was important again.
Thank you very much, sir. That's all the time we have for questions right now, so I'll turn it back to you, Rock.
Sammy, thank you very much. And again, Darren McChrystal, I cannot thank you enough for joining us tonight, for your comments. And I would be hesitant to tell you the stories that all of us from this board of directors and this team will be able to tell here in a few years. So look forward to those phone calls that just feel right. Sir, appreciate your time. And at this this time, I'd like to turn over to Mark Weaver for our progress to date.
And sir, Mark Weaver here. So thank you for being so gracious with your time tonight and for sharing your thoughts with us. Like Mark DeRocchi just mentioned, I believe that we have seen the impact of that bandwidth to help others, and we as a fund are excited to see our bandwidth grow. And I really like that analogy. As many people on the call know, a group of us did come together ahead of our 10-year reunion back in 2008, and we did develop this concept of the Memorial Scholarship Fund, and our slightly modified motto of duty did not wait. So the mission of this all-volunteer board of directors and our key supporters has been to develop this fund to help support the children of our classmates who have fallen too soon. Additionally, it is our mission to gain and maintain contact with the families of our classmates so they may always feel part of the class of 93. Of our 12 fallen classmates, we have been able to maintain sustained contact with 5 of those families. Through this, and thanks to your generous support, we have been able to make commitments of $10,000 each for 7 of our classmates' children. And members have provided support for several other children using their own funds to help keep the families connected to our class. So while we have made contact with 2 other families who do not require support at this time, we would like to continue our efforts to reach out to all families. And all of you on this call can help. First, we'd like to ask for continued submission of photos to our Facebook page to help provide a repository of these memories. And second, we'd ask those that communicate with the families to invite them to connect with us so that we can help share our memories of their loved ones and allow us to explore different opportunities to maintain our contact and then provide future support to them. Finally, we would ask that you continue to share the story and the mission of the 98 Fund with your other classmates and friends, especially those without an active online presence. And as this, we can bring the fund together and continue to grow as a family. Overall, it's through these families of the fallen and injured that our fund continues to review our purpose and methods, as well as renew our motivation to continue to grow our fund to ensure the continued support to others in the future. With that, I'll pass it back over to Mark DeRocchi to introduce some of these amazing families. Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much for highlighting some of those things. And it's now my absolute great honor to introduce someone who's very near and dear to my heart and my family. She's one of our Gold Star family members. The absolute strength and being of the Voelke household. Someone that I've watched go through a very hard time, although it's a horrific time to be in the situation. I was the casualty assistance officer for the Voelkes. And I am absolutely amazed to this day of the strength of Traci Voelke. The things that I saw her family go through and how she held together 2 young growing boys absolutely convinced me that what we were doing was spot on. At this time, it's my absolute honor to introduce Traci.
Hi, Mark. Thank you. That was very, very kind. Before I get into specifics, I just wanted to say on behalf of Ben, AJ, and myself, thank you to the 98 Fund for their unwavering support of our family through what was undoubtedly the most difficult time in our lives. You have all played a vital role in my family's healing, and I just simply can't thank you enough. I remember that we were stationed at Fort Stewart, and Rob had spoke to Paul about the 98 Fund. Paul was so excited to get involved in the organization. He really believed in your mission, and he knew that you were doing great things. After Paul's death, I just instinctually knew that Paul would have wanted me to reach out to Rob. I didn't even have his phone number, but something just told me, get a hold of someone to get a hold of Rob. So I called another classmate, and I just knew that Paul would have wanted me to do this. He would have wanted me to find the person that was going to take care of us. He was a pretty smart man. In the days following Paul's death, Rob went above and beyond the call of duty taking care of our family. There were a few gaps that presented themselves, and with each one, Rob offered the 98 Fund and their vast resources and support. I remember at one point we were worried about funding a family member to fly in to the funeral or fly into one of the memorial services. But my mind was at ease because I knew everything would be taken care of. That was critical. At a time when your mind is on so many different things, it was critical to know that you were going to be taken care of. Sometime after Paul's death, I discussed my concerns with Rock about the boys. boys were active in sports. My older son AJ had moved with the military 6 times. This life was the only life that he had ever known. How was I going to keep the connection to their dad alive? Who was going to teach them to camp, to drive, and to help them through life? I lived right outside the DC area now, and I remember visiting the Lincoln Memorial and seeing the words of Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address. And just as the Civil War was wrapping up, the same words that led to the creation of the Veterans Administration, and I'm sure you're all familiar with them, but it said, with malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to find us in the nation's boon, to care for the kin who shall warn the battle, and for widow and orphan, to do all that which makes peace and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and our nation. And so the VA was formed out of that statement, and yes, they do provide some financial support from our family, but there's just so much more to take care of these families than just finances. More precious than any money is your time. Each one of you are taking the time to be here today, to listen to each other, to be here for me and for the other 98 fallen families. And we just simply can't put a price tag on it. So when the opportunity came for AJ to go to Alaska and visit Ross, I knew we had to make this work. AJ talked about his trip for weeks before he went and weeks after he came home. Ross provided a type of mentorship that you simply cannot find. AJ got to see all that Alaska had to offer. They camped, they hiked, they cooked food, they looked for moose bones, they saw the northern lights, they fished, they hoped they didn't get charged by a moose. They rode in some pretty dangerous vehicles without a helmet. Luckily, I only saw the pictures after that was done. They built bridges, but they built trust, and they built camaraderie. And AJ got a one-on-one attention with a man just like his dad, with similar values, and perhaps the most important, a sense of duty to the families that are left behind. AJ returned a more confident young man, feeling somewhat invisible based on what he had seen and what he had accomplished. When AJ has a bad day, if he needs help with anything, but especially with his algebra homework, he calls Ross and he knows that he has unconditional attention. It is honestly more than I could have ever asked for, and I'm forever grateful to each and every one of you for your contribution to this fund, and I know that Paul would be humbled by the great care he's taken of us. You really have something special, and I hope it continues to thrive. Thank you for letting me speak to you today.
Traci, this is Rock, and I can only tell you that literally the gift that you just described to AJ was tenfold back to me, and I am so honored to continue to be part of your family. And as you mentioned, I'm also honored to continue to be the algebra additional instruction person for AJ. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly why we do what we do, and it's to help those that need help. When we have the bandwidth, we do what we can. I'd like to turn it over to Sammy Sok for a second to talk about another family and introduce them that also has the challenge.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and a pleasure for me to present to you Ms. Bianca and Major Darren Baldwin. I've asked them to come on tonight to talk to us about their experiences, especially Bianca taking care of their loved one when they come back from a war zone a little bit different and not what they expected. I've known Bianca since our time back at Fort Benning in 2003, and I've always known that Bianca Baldwin was a strong woman, but throughout these years, I've seen that she's gone stronger as she supports Darren in their difficult times. But the greatest things that I've experienced, that I've learned from Bianca, is that the love between her and Darren is very strong, and no matter what happens, that their bond cannot be broken. So tonight, I introduce you Bianca Baldwin and Darren Baldwin to talk to you guys about their experiences. Bianca.
Well, thank you, Sammy. That was really sweet. I didn't know I needed tissues, too. So Darren and I are here, and as he said, our situation is a little different than Traci's. Darren obviously came home alive, but different. And some of you were able to join us in 2010 for Darren's Purple Heart commemoration in Ohio. and I gave a speech there about the war coming home. Excuse me, Dan is coughing, so I'm sorry. So, how did it start? Obviously, Darren graduated with y'all in '98. He was then stationed in Germany. That's where we met. We got married in 2002. And in 2005, Darren went through Special Forces training. He became a 10th grouper out in Colorado. In 2004, he deployed for the first time. In 2005, he deployed for the second time to Iraq. And that is when he had 2 roadside bombs within 9 days in between of them. Obviously, the second one really rattled his cage where he was unconscious, but he woke up from it and just kind of carried on. And until he came home, nobody realized that something was different. Me personally, I knew immediately something had changed, but you could not pinpoint it. There was just minor changes, a little more, even like more angry, which is very unusual for Darren. Everybody who knows Darren, he's usually like, the life of the party. So then things just kind of started to go from there. After a third deployment that he did, he started to feel not right, and then he had to come back sooner from the deployment because he was going to become the aide-de-camp for USAFIC. And that is when we started to find out more because he had to get checked out by the group search and intent group. And then they found well over 30 lesions in his brain. And obviously, everybody was thinking at first it's brain cancer. It might be some sort of infection. We went to Walter Reed. And really, for the next, since 2005, 6, for the next 3 to 4 years, we really had no true diagnosis. He went with MS. He was treated for MS. He got worse. Once then we figured out, okay, there's Lyme disease, traumatic brain injury, and since then Darren's diagnosis list is just, there's so much toxicities, it's just all kinds of crazy, really. But what does it mean for the spouse? Well, when they first come back and they're different, you kind of don't know what's going on. Your soldier wants to just hide it. That seems to be a very common thing for them. Nothing is wrong. Don't say nothing. I don't want to ruin my career. So you kind of keep quiet, but you observe that things are just not the same anymore. And then eventually you just go into fighting mode because you want to find out what's wrong. You want to fix it. Eventually you go into kind of a survival mode. Then you go through anger when you realize something is wrong and it just can't be fixed with some Motrin and some water, the vitamin M situation. You go through almost like part of you and part of your life died. So you go through a lot of grieving because the loss you're having is real. And eventually you come to where you keep on going and then you realize more and more what is actually all in you. What is your marriage made of? And even though there's a lot of challenges, then you realize that you can do a lot and you can overcome a lot and how much you can grow because this is for 10 years now. Sometimes I look back and it's like, wow, you know how they say God doesn't give you anything more than you can't handle. You're like, man, I must be a badass by now, I'm like indestructible. But then you're surprised because you still find yourself challenged because in Darren's situation in particular, he has been very stable, but most recently he went into a septic shock. He was perfectly fine, and all of a sudden, 50 minutes later, he's having like 103 fever. No warning, no signs, and next thing is you call 911 after him not having to go to an emergency department for almost 10 months. Situations that you don't ever know when that second shoe may drop. And I think one of the rewards truly is that you learn to, you live in today, you count your blessings. You're grateful when you just have good days. Obviously, with Darren, there will be better days and not so good days, but you just get to appreciate what you do have. And, waking up in the morning suddenly takes on a different meaning. It's like, okay, we're here one more day, and, we have one more day, and we can fight on one more day. Darren remains to be in great spirits. Sammy, as you said, our love actually has grown stronger. We as a couple have grown stronger. Another thing, so that I tell caregivers that are coming into the situation very new is one other thing. Love is a great, great deal. Having support from friends and family is a big deal. It's also great how, especially class of 98, and then obviously with Darren's Special Forces brothers, none of them goes ever away. This is all very important. But for the caregiver and the husband, in our case, or sometimes it's the wife who serves, but what the main thing is that I have found is you are friends. And when you are best friends, you realize you're not leaving your best friend easily. We have seen lots of friends, wounded guys, where spouses do leave and they just can't do it anymore. And oftentimes when you talk to them, it seems like they're not friends. So having a strong marriage is essential. Having a lot of love and going the way together and pulling together is very important, but friendship is very important too. I think that's something that Darren and I honor almost the most, that our friendship is allowing us to grow or continue to grow as a couple and really keep our promise to, for better, for worse, in sickness and health. Because I do believe that that's one of the things that I have learned, that without friendship, like if your partner, if your spouse is not your best friend, there's a lot of things that you will miss out on, and you might turn your back on it because it does become a very big challenge. And sometimes you just want to break apart and you want to run away. But if you're married to your best friend, you're not going to leave your best friend behind, because that's the type of person, you end up in jail with after a crazy night, and you need to bail each other out, or you just sit there together and be like, man, we really messed up today. I think that's something that I really would like to put out there, that there's so much to it, and it's not easy. There's a lot of reward in it, but the friendship part, the love and the friendship, it's both very, very important to pull through. Other than that, that's a quick rundown of the last 10 years. Again, Darren is recovering from his septic shock. He's actually getting there quite well. He still has a lot of that coughing going on. But other than that, we're hanging in there. Very grateful that you asked us to join you tonight. I think you guys are great. Wish we could, get together. We're still planning on coming out to this point at some point for some of the reunions, I hope. So, having that said, thanks for inviting us. And I'm going to hand it back to Sammy or whoever is going to take over from here.
Bianca, thank you so much for that, condensing 10 years of experiences in a few minutes. And, you always have each and every one of us in the class of 98 you guys could reach out to. And I really appreciated the call you gave me a couple of years ago when Darren just needed someone to talk to. So, Bianca, we've always got your back. And if you ever need anything, please reach out to us. And at this time, thanks, Bianca. And at this time, I'd like to turn over to John Serafini to give us a review of our financial status.
Thank you, Sammy. This is John. And thank you, Bianca and Darren, for your very kind and thoughtful and salient remarks. For a quick update on our financial performance, I offer the following. We have about $189,000 in cash and marketable securities at this point in time. It's an increase of about $45,000 since the beginning of 2015, and an increase of over $115,000 since the beginning of 2014. Of course, as Mark Weaver mentioned, we should keep in mind that's less than $70,000 of commitments that have already been made to the children of our fallen. I would also mention that our financial performance has been done with zero overhead, meaning that every dollar that's been contributed to the 98 Fund has been invested or sitting in cash. All sales and administrative costs have been borne by the volunteer members of the board. Our return since the inception of the 98 Fund is 14.5% compounded. And we currently have, as you'd imagine, a diversified portfolio of equities and fixed income, all held through mutual funds, ETFs. With the current cash and securities on hand, plus the leadership gift commitments which we've received, as well as continued commitment from our recurring donors, we anticipate having approximately $390,000 available within the fund by the time of our 20th reunion in a few years. In terms of fundraising, we're blessed to have such fantastic benefactors supporting the fund. We've been running, as many of you are aware, our annual 1998 campaign, which is asking individuals to donate $19.98 per month or more. Some individuals are giving upwards of $50 to $100 per month. Historically, we've had approximately 96 individuals who have signed up, which is about 10% or 11% of our class of 809. Over time, due to expiration of credit cards or loss of credit cards, etc., we've dropped down, and we currently sit at 69 current recurring campaign contributors, and that produces just about $21,000 per year in contributions. I'd ask that if anyone on the call has had their credit card changed recently and they've realized that they're no longer giving on a monthly basis, that they please visit our website and renew your contribution. It's greatly appreciated. In addition, over the past 2 years, 24 months, we've had 76 one-time donors, which have totaled just over $46,000. So we've had a tremendous amount of support from our class, as well as other individuals outside their class. And for those, we are eternally grateful. On the screen, I hope you can see a list of one-time contributors, as well as those recurring contributors to the 1998 Fund. And we've starred with double asterisks those individuals who have graciously contributed over $1,000 to both groups. Thank you very much for all of your support to the 98 Fund. I'll turn it over now to Tim O'Connor. Tim.
Thank you, John. Well, Brock opened up with the 11 reasons why the 98 Fund was established. McChrystal then talked about doing something that feels right when he called the classmate of his who had throat cancer. And then listening to the two of our 98 families who joined us on the call tonight, this just feels right to me. And part of the reason that we're doing activities is to keep the spirit of the fund alive. And we believe that if we build it and we continue to find ways to connect, that the donations will come. And I would like to encourage those of you out there, if this feels right to you, please take some time to consider re-upping with a donation tonight. One of the ways that we keep the spirit alive is every time we do a monthly board call. Before we begin that call, we do a memorial for one of our classmates in the order in which we lost them. In fact, last night, as we were preparing for this call, we recognized Jay Harding and Jamie Anderson, who we recently lost. Unfortunately, this year, in speaking with Nick, we decided that it was a bridge too far to do the Army-Navy tailgate. However, we are planning something bigger for next year. And in lieu of that, we're focusing our attention more on the 98 Fund camping events. You may have seen a survey or two in recent history that dealt with a marquee event and trying to attract attention on a West Coast trip, sort of as an off-season from the reunions. Well, this year we've been planning a camping outing that was more accessible, more family-oriented, And we thought that we could almost replicate something like what Rob spoke about earlier in having AJ come visit in Alaska. So I think on the screen you'll see Sammy posting something that John O'Brien has built, where we'll have 7 or so families gathered at a New Mexico campground, relatively cost. The cost is relatively inexpensive, accessible to the Southwest region. And the cool thing about it is that we've attracted classmates, Michelle Vielke, Erica, Ian, Raina, John, and Mark, all distributed throughout the U.S. and anticipate, along with a camping event in West Point, having about 5 or 6 regionally based events in the summer of 2016. Another initiative that we're beginning for next year is Gold Star Homes. Andy McCleary and George Woods are in the contracting industry, and Jason Kostal will speak a little bit more about some initiatives along those lines in a moment. But the idea behind this is that for our Gold Star families impacted by a loss of our classmate, if they need help with refurbishing a home or keeping a home intact, we'd like to be there to support them through that. Last thing I'd like to mention is I spoke a little bit about the need for additional funding, and General McChrystal said, it's important, and it is. And one thing that we'd like to do in the coming year is allow you to run your own campaign on behalf of the 98 Fund. And Michelle Vielke will be reconstituting the website with new features, and one of those features will be a crowd rise capability where you could run a 5K, half marathon, a full marathon, and donate that activity through fundraising to the 98 Fund. That concludes my remarks with respect to activities. I'd like to pass it now to Jason Kostal.
Thank you, Tim. I'm going to briefly talk about some of the different ways in which you can continue to support the fund. It's essentially an ongoing initiative. We've talked briefly about the monetary support. You're all familiar with it. But the 1998 per month donation, one-time donations, all of those help us continue to raise funds that we can use and apply towards helping the children and families of our fallen classmates. We're starting to reach out a little bit more and look for donation matching from companies as well as commercial donations as well in order to try to build our fund. And as Tim just mentioned on the website, in the future there'll be opportunities for personal fundraising in that capacity. Monetary aside, one of the things that can help us in the future as we move forward and take part in some of these initiatives is volunteer support. We're going to be looking to do things all over the country for the families and children of our fallen classmates. And essentially, if you live in an area and you feel able and compelled to help us with that, we're always going to need people to help us, as Traci said, spend time with the children, remind them of their parent or family member that was lost. And it's just a great opportunity to give back in a way that really takes up just time, but is immeasurable in the value and benefits that it creates. As Tim mentioned, we're trying to change the charter of our original fund. It initially was about providing college scholarships to the children of our fallen classmates. And as we've moved along this path and we realized that the college scholarships are more of a long-term goal, we've started to look at near-term opportunities. And in doing so, we've been able to reach out and help some of the children, help some of the families who have immediate needs right now. And we've done that not only through financial gifts, but also through our time and overall just the capabilities of the class of 98. One of the things we're looking at in the future, as Tim mentioned, is the idea of helping families maintain their homes, maintain their lifestyles and things like that, with immediate needs that we can facilitate. So you're going to hear more about that in the future. And it really just allows us to reach out to the families and take care of them and let them know that we're continually here for them. Something you're going to see on the website, and Sammy will post a picture of it, is we have some hats that were recently made, and we're going to be selling these through the website. The cost of the hat is $25 plus shipping. And what it allows us to do is two things. spread that word and raise the awareness through our Facebook page, our website, or things like the hats in public. The more people know about our fund, the more support we're going to get, and the greater the contribution we're going to be able to make. So moving forward, what we really ask is not just monetary contributions, which are of course very beneficial, but the idea of giving of your time and helping us with resources and things of that nature so that we can continue to really support the families of the people that we care about so much. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sammy for any questions.
Thanks, Jason. I was wondering if is General McChrystal, sir, are you still on? I'm guessing he's off. Okay, so we'll just go into the class relevant question. Hey, Rock, a question that came up was we know that there's not going to be an official tailgate during Army Navy. Do you know of anyone that may be hosting a tailgate or some sort of gathering during this year's Army Navy game?
Sam, this is Rock. That's a great question for whoever submitted it. At this time, we are not aware of anyone that is going to be in the area to host an impromptu get-together. But at the same time, if there's anyone on this call or listening to the call after that will be in the area, we'd be happy to advertise and help get the class together at their event.
Thanks, Rock. There seem to be no more questions right now. There's none right now, but as this video gets published and word spread, I'm sure questions will be coming in. So if anyone who's watching right now or who will be watching later on, if you have any questions for any of the board, you can submit it on the Facebook page on the 98 Fund, or you can email us at uspain98.scholarship@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to answer this question. Oh, hey, Brock, actually, Bill Sung just came on and volunteered and said he'll be at the game and he'll be happy to buy a lot of drinks for people. Thanks, Bill.
So, Bill, this is Rock. Thank you very much. Absolutely great to have you on board. And if after the call we can get all your information, we'll be happy to broadcast it through the fund sites and then get the class back together. As you understand, that it's a fantastic event for everyone to relive some old memories, as General McChrystal talked about. Sammy, have you any other questions at this time?
No other questions.
All right, classmates, friends, family of the 98 Fund, this has been an absolute honor to have you on board for the last hour. Have heard a lot of moving things. We listened to General McChrystal talk about his experience and coming back and how the class surrounded him after he retired. We heard about Traci Voelke's situation and how absolutely moving the event meant support for her after the passing of Paul. And then, of course, the situation with Baldwin is absolutely impressive, the fact of the love and the caring and taking care of each other, and then also the strength of Bianca. I'd like to close with one thing. On the screen right now, you should see a list of 12 names. And if you remember, I opened the comments tonight with we have 11 reasons why we do this. And unfortunately, just recently, we added a 12th. And that's Jamie Anderson. And I specifically reserved an opportunity to talk about him for 1 second tonight because I didn't want his recent passing going unnoticed. The fact that we as the board started this year with 11 reasons to take care of each other, and unfortunately now we have 12. And so Jamie, as you're out there, just like we hope that Darren is able to hear and understand all of us now, we miss you, we love you, and we are here to help take care of those that you left behind. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time today. If this listening to this call so moves you, we greatly appreciate your support, whether it be financial donation, whether it be volunteering to help with time, or as Bill Song just did, volunteering to help with a class event that we can all participate in. This concludes the full portion of the actual annual conference call. Thank you.